So, Iran is being tested right now, caught up in a much wider conflict, and it's causing one of its oldest internal questions to boil right to the surface. We're talking about the Kurdish people. There's this narrative starting to build that they're trying to take over. So, in this explainer, we're going to dig in and see if that's what's really going on.
Okay, first things first. To get a handle on the Kurdish situation, we've got to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Imagine it's March 2026. Iran is being stretched, I mean really stretched, to its absolute limits. A huge regional war is putting incredible pressure on the government, not just from the outside, but from the inside too.
And whenever you have that kind of intense pressure, cracks start to appear. It opens up a window of opportunity. With Tehran's central government totally focused on the war, different groups across the country are seizing the moment to push their own agendas. And that's especially true for the massive Kurdish population out in the West.
All of this activity has sparked a major question, one that you've probably heard being debated in news reports and analysis. And it's this: are Iran's Kurdish groups actually trying to take over the entire country? Now, it's a really provocative idea, for sure. But as we're about to see, it might just be a profound misunderstanding of what their goals really are. But here's the thing. To really answer that question, just looking at today's headlines isn't going to cut it. We have to dive into the history, because what's happening right now, well, it's just the latest chapter in a struggle that has some very, very deep roots. So who exactly are the Kurds in Iran? Well, they're one of the country's largest ethnic minorities, and they're mostly concentrated in the western parts of the country. For generations, their entire political identity has been built around one powerful idea: self-determination. The right to govern themselves and protect their own unique culture. And look, this struggle is nothing new. It goes way back. From the high hopes for autonomy after the 1979 revolution that never really panned out, to the constant simmering clashes of the last few decades, there has always been this tension with the central government. This isn't a sudden eruption. It's a pot that's been boiling for a long, long time. What's really striking is just how consistent their core complaints have been over all this time. They're demanding regional autonomy, the right to use their own language, an end to being neglected economically. These are the exact same fundamental issues that have defined the Kurdish movement for decades.
So if these are old issues, what makes 2026 the tipping point, right? Why is this all blowing up now? Well, it looks like a perfect storm, really, created by four key factors all hitting at once.
The first factor is a power vacuum. Simple as that. The war with the U.S.-Israel coalition has forced Tehran to pull its military and political focus somewhere else, and that's weakened its grip on the outer regions of the country, creating an opening for groups like the Kurds to make a move. Second, there's a new sense of unity among the Kurds themselves. We're hearing reports that political parties that were historically rivals have actually formed a coalition, and that kind of coordinated effort means they can mobilize and organize way more effectively than they could have before. The third piece of the puzzle is external influence. Foreign powers seem to see the Kurds as useful partners to help weaken the Iranian regime. And let's be clear, for these outside countries, it's not really about creating an independent Kurdistan. It's about using local frustrations as a piece on a much, much larger geopolitical chessboard. And finally, the fourth factor is the reaction from Tehran itself. The Iranian state sees any kind of Kurdish mobilization as a separatist threat to the country's integrity, and so it responds forcefully. But that heavy-handed response just fuels more resistance, and you get stuck in this really dangerous feedback loop. Okay, so with all that context laid out, let's circle back to that big question we started with. And the answer really seems to boil down to one critical distinction. The goal here is autonomy, not domination. On one side, you have the actual goal: more self-rule, more rights, but within their own historic regions. And on the other side, you have the myth, this narrative that they're trying to control all of Iran. And those are two completely different things. And the proof, really, is in what Kurdish groups are consistently asking for. Look at their demands. It's all about autonomy for their regions, protecting their culture, and making the government less centralized. What you don't see anywhere is a plan for national conquest. Their focus is overwhelmingly local. So why does this distinction even matter? Is this all just a game of words? Absolutely not. Understanding the difference between a push for autonomy and a push for domination has huge, real-world consequences. There's one piece of analysis that just puts it perfectly. It says, the narrative of domination distorts the real motives. You see, when we use that word, domination, we completely miss the real story, which is about a community using a moment of crisis to finally push for its long-held dream of local self-determination. And the risks of getting this wrong are severe. It lets people just dismiss legitimate grievances as a simple power grab. It gives the state the perfect excuse to crack down hard. And it completely papers over the fact that the Kurds themselves aren't one single hive mind. Many are actually very cautious about this whole thing escalating. The domination narrative is just a harmful oversimplification.
And this all leaves us with a much bigger, much thornier question. In a world where central governments everywhere are under more and more strain, this push for local rights is only going to get stronger. So the real challenge becomes trying to understand that incredibly fine line. Where does a people's right to determine their own future end, and the kind of separatism that can tear a country apart begin? There are no easy answers to that one.